Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode here on John Chen Out to the World. Here today, we have the honorable guest, Tony DeVoile. He is a sergeant over in the Air Force and the leader moderator of a men's group called Living Letters. He is a Christian, a devout one at that, and he also is same-sex attracted or gay. All right, Tony. Well, can you give a little bit more clarity on that?
Sure, yeah. Thank you for having me, John.
Yeah.
My name's Tony DeVoile. I'm a senior master sergeant in the Air Force. I've worked for the Chaplain Corps as a religious affairs airman for a little over 20 years now.
Wow. Very cool. And then you run this amazing group. I know I have the privilege to be a part of, full of brothers of the Christian faith, but also people who are gay, people who are married, have kids with other women, and who are single as well. People who are also in same-sex relationships as well, right? Within this group.
Yes, yeah, we've had it for about 2 years now through Facebook.
Cool. And what do you guys do there? Like, do you guys just like run Bible studies? Do you just like get coffee or something if they're in the area?
Yeah, I'd say both of those things. But I'd say the crux of the group is, I'd say, how a man like me, a man like us, men like us,
Yeah.
can really live an abundant life as a Christian man with same-sex attraction. Like, what does that look like? So that we're sort of journeying together, and as we discover truths, sharing them there.
Mm. So within the Christian faith, I know that some people may be oblivious to this, but you don't just get born into Christianity. I think some people just think that because of placement and so forth. Thinking about my background, I'm Chinese, and my family, they were in a Marxist, basically atheist country for the most part, and it was like two grandmas removed. Great great grandmother was the first woman in my household to come to faith, and so it's a choice. It's something that we choose to identify with Jesus Christ and His narrative, His sacrifice, and redemption of our souls, essentially. Right now, that's a little bit convoluted, but tell me a little bit about how you even came to the Christian faith, and were you always in a Christian household, or did you never really think about it much growing up?
Yeah, so I was raised to believe in God, but it wasn't. I wouldn't say the Christian faith was ever really practiced in our home in a meaningful way. And I'd say probably around the age 16, I started just acting out sexually with friends, and sort of just discovered that, okay, I guess I'm gay. Let's go figure out what that's about.
Right.
And did that for about 3 years. Um, had three different partners, and then at age 19, I was working at Sears in the men's jean department, and
Nice.
there was a probably in her 50s, 50-year-old black lady evangelist, Carolyn Murphy, who just befriended me, and she is this ball of sunshine, just talks to everybody. Everybody loves her. It's really gregarious, and she knew everything about me without me saying a word about my personal life. And yeah, and but really was kind to me, funny, and she would just say little things like, you know, God loves you so much. You're so special to Him. He's going to use you mightily one day. And those little nuggets that she would just sort of drop along the way attracted me to know this God she loved, and that came through her personality in such a big way. So at 19, I gave my life to Christ in that church, and that sort of started this journey.
Because of this woman that you worked at Sears with, essentially.
Yes, yeah, I was miserable in the lifestyle.
Why? Can you tell me a little bit about that? How?
Yeah, so I had just, while I was working with her, I had come to learn that my boyfriend I was living with was an Army police officer, had multiple other partners, and I didn't know that.
Okay.
And that was devastating to me, because in my mind I thought that I could love one man and have this sort of fairy tale life, and that was not the case. And then the two people I'd been with before that, it was the same thing. So my heart had been kind of broken. This is
Right.
the third go round.
Right.
And I really couldn't get mad at him because I was behaving the same way.
Yeah.
So it was like I hated myself. I
Right.
hated the cycle. I hated just the promiscuity and just all of it.
Mm.
But I didn't know how to get out. And so my meeting with her was definitely God's timing.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so yeah, from that, I'd say my first encounter with Christ was um, really life changing. So much so that I left everything and didn't really start to. I left it for 15 years and really didn't start to unpack anything until about 5 years ago.
Okay, so you left the gay community, the gay culture,
Right.
and that's not easy. I mean, your friends, people you probably associate with, ex-boyfriends and so forth, obviously. But do you miss those people? I mean, I'm sure they were
I
very
do.
special to you.
Yeah, I keep in contact with a few of them now,
Yeah,
but I joined the Air Force, so that
yeah,
helped me because
that does
you
help.
know they shipped me out anyway. I was leaving, so all of the
Just
timing of that.
go abroad.
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah, but yeah. So the pendulum kind of swung, and I got into really deep conservative Pentecostalism, kind of. So the
Mhm.
pendulum swung from that
Wow.
to
Okay.
you know
Yeah.
where
Not to rag on the Pentecostals here. We love you.
no, I still am a proud Pentecostal,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but a more understanding, toned down version. But
I
so
hear you.
yeah,
I hear you, brother.
I was in a church that believed that if you experienced these feelings that you had a demon and it needed to come
Mm,
out, and there were
yeah.
groups that you could go to try to do that, and reparative
Cast the demon
therapies and
out.
different things. So totally different world.
Right.
Um,
So, did you go through conversion therapy other than trying to cast out these demons? Like, that's really interesting. Like, how did that go? And did you also do conversion therapy? What's that like?
I did not do conversion therapy. I never felt like I was any less than any other kind of believer. And maybe it was just, I feel like God so richly loved me, especially, well, my whole life, my whole time with Him, but especially in the beginning, that it actually was really easy for me in the beginning. I mean, I left everything and was happy to. Um, but yeah, it's, um, what was your
Yeah.
question again? Remind me of
So
that.
with the Pentecostals, they believe. I believe it's side X, which is
Right.
they're very ultra spiritual in that respect, and
Yes.
they want to cast out these demons,
Right.
right? Of homosexuality. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I went through sessions like that and the feelings were still there.
Yeah.
So again, that's what I was gonna say. The way Christ or the Holy Spirit related to me was never in the way it wasn't like what I was experiencing in these sessions. So I just stopped going. And I would always, share with my pastors wherever we went because we would move a lot. And the answer I would always get was the same answer. Wow, brother, thank you for your testimony, but I don't know what to do with you. Like, I don't know anyone
Right.
else like you. No one's ever in the church come and told me this. So, this is early 2000s
Yep.
when it really, I mean, I think Exodus was just coming online, and
Oh, really?
there wasn't a lot of talk about it. You just hit it
Yeah.
back
Right.
then.
You have Will and Grace, and you have Ellen DeGeneres, and a few big names, out there sharing about their sexuality and these types of stories. But you definitely don't have that coming from the Christian end because it's so shamed upon, to be able to bring up anything outside of a heterosexual union struggles with sexuality, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. And so, okay, you did not find success in casting out these homo demons, these homosexual demons,
No.
right? Well, then, how are you married today? Because I know that you have a wife. The viewers would be interested to know that you have a wife and 3 kids, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
How big are they?
12, 9, and 8. a daughter, a girl, and two boys.
That's good. I like the evenly spaced out, years.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and we actually have a second daughter, but she's a angel baby. She was a
Oh,
stillborn, so my wife had four in a row.
wow, that's fascinating. I tell you what, my family, my dad and mom, they had a stillborn, first eldest son. And if that didn't happen, actually, because of the Chinese communist regime, the one child policy, none of us kids would have been born because they would have
Wow.
stayed there in China. My dad would have just stayed there. He said, unless if, my kid died, my first beautiful son died, like I wouldn't have chosen to go anywhere else. So landed here in America and had us kids. So
I'm
pretty great to
so
have that.
grateful. That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty wild, huh? Yeah,
So
but yeah,
thankful.
sorry for your loss, but you have three beautiful children today, huh?
Thank you. Yes, I'm very grateful.
Yeah, they're adorable. They're adorable. They're mixed
Thank you.
babies. I love mixed babies. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. How did you meet your wife? So how did that work? Did
Yeah.
you meet her at church? Was she also part of the Pentecostal group, or what kind of tradition was she from? And how did you guys meet?
Yeah. So we met in the Air Force
Nice.
and technical training. We were both in the same training. And then we got stationed at the same first base. So when you finish training, they ship you off to where you're actually going to work.
Okay.
And
And
that
did
was
you
in,
go to first base at first
ah,
base?
yes,
You did? Oh, whoa.
first
Okay. All
base at
right.
first base. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Cheeky there.
That was in St. Louis.
St. Louis.
It's, yeah, it's Scott Air Force Base. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Robin's story, she was raised in church, comes from a whole line of preachers, but
Nice.
kind of knew God off the coattails of mom and dad, right?
Yeah.
And was sort of searching to find him for herself as a young adult. And we had the same circle of friends as 20-year-olds. And so, of course, all of us would go to chapel together. And then we kind of noticed that, well, her and I were sort of serious about pursuing God. And our other friends would just come because we dragged them, right? So we just sort of bonded as a friend, as friends.
Yeah.
And she always knew about my same-sex attraction. And I can remember the first time I told her, she's like, "So what?"
Really?
Now she's from LA,
Oh, okay.
and a lot of her friends she grew up with ended up being some flavor of gay or
Yeah.
whatever. So she was comfortable talking with me about that. And but so yeah, we were friends for 6 years.
Hmm.
And into about year two, I started noticing, and I always liked girls growing up,
Hmm.
just not as much as I like guys, right?
Right. Right. So
And
can you explain that a little bit? Because I feel very much in the same boat in that way. I had like
yeah,
I don't think I had like that passionate feelings for guys at all growing up until puberty. Yeah.
yes. Yeah, I
Oh,
think that my attraction to women has always been more emotionally drawn.
yeah. Totally.
If I bond emotionally, then there can be something there.
Yeah.
Whereas with men, it's more physical on the front end,
That way.
and then so it's kind of swapped. But
Mm.
yeah, my more natural, just basic attraction has probably always been toward men, and I don't, you know, when you talk to therapists and they sort of map like the classic things that
Freudian,
happen. Yeah,
everything.
yeah, I have
Yeah.
all of it. I've got
You
all of
did.
the boxes
Yeah.
checked.
Yeah. But
So
there
I
is a
don't know.
pattern. I think people would be a bit naive to say that there wasn't some pattern also of upbringing.
Sure,
Just like average maybe. I don't know.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Not always, but
Not always.
most of the time you can see something there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so out of that friendship, I started feeling differently for her, like
Mm.
romantic type feelings, and that puzzled me because I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
And it kind of scared me
Yeah.
because I had just had it in my mind that I'm going to be single, celibate, and loving Jesus, and that's all I knew.
Right.
And I would go to these singles groups in the church, and it was all about how to get ready for marriage. And I'm like, tell me how to be single. Like, I don't want to be married. And
Yeah.
I was never a miserable single person. I would travel Europe by myself largely. I'd take myself to dinner. I liked to be alone, and I always felt like God was near because He was,
Yeah.
and so I just was never like a desperate single person. So when this all happened, I'm like, whoa, this is I didn't see this coming,
Right. Right.
and so it just kind of grew, and I knew I got orders to Germany, and I knew before I left for Germany that she was probably the one, but I was terrified of marriage because I disqualified myself because of this same-sex attraction.
Right.
So I still didn't know quite what to do with that. So 2 years in Germany, we talked every day, we stayed close, and I just thought, I always said, when I go back to the States, I want to propose to Robin. And so that's what I did. And that was 15 years ago. So, and she's been with me every step of the way. She's not insecure about my feelings. She understands it. I think she gets what's broken and why it's broken.
Okay.
And not just me, but even men like us. And I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing if I didn't have that kind of support and understanding. So really, she's the backbone of Living Letters. She loves my friends. And we've worked through some fear and insecurity on her end a few times where it was just like, okay, what's worst case scenario? One of us has an affair. Well, guess what? Even if that happens, I want to be with you.
Yeah.
I want to work it out. So sometimes you have to get over that worst fear and just say, well, till death do us part, right? No matter what comes our way, we're going to work through it. So,
that's a very brave statement to say. I mean, it's very bold because, marriage has been kind of reduced to a contract of sorts in our society. And, it's however much we're attracted to the individual at the end of the day rather than a vow, rather than a covenant for people who are religious or people of faith. And I value that because we know that how beneficial that is for kids, first of all, for the family system. But for you guys, it's also something that's spiritual. Now, I don't know fully how you feel about this, but how do you identify? Like, do you call yourself gay? Do you say you're a queer Christian, or what would you say?
I say same-sex attracted Christian. That feels like the best label for me, but I don't have a problem with other people referring to me as gay.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't bother me. Yeah, it doesn't bother me at all.
Right. Can you actually map yourself on the Kinsey scale? I know you know what the Kinsey scale is, right?
It's been a while since I looked.
Okay. So 0 is completely heterosexual, and then 6 is completely homosexual. X is, some people have 0 as asexual, but X is typically asexual. So
yeah, I'm probably a 4 or 5.
A 4 or 5? Okay, yeah, I would say I'm a 4. I'm a 4. It's actually shifted a bit, so it sounds like it's shifted for you too over the years.
Yes, and it's weird for me. My attraction to my wife is like apples and oranges. My attraction to my wife really doesn't have anything to do with my attraction to men. It's like two different worlds for me.
Right. Yeah.
And I've had to be careful to not compartmentalize that. But it is, the needs are completely different. They don't look anything alike. And that's been interesting for me to sort through over the years. Yeah. And I think it helps her, understand that, and some men do. They marry a woman because they think that that's going to heal their SSN. It's not. Yeah. It's not. You're still going to have to do your work. I mean, I wish that's all it took, because I would have been healed 15 years ago. But
have you ever heard of a guy who became straight or straighter because the guy?
I have heard people say that, and it's not to knock that. I honestly think some people just receive some miraculous,
a manifestation of another.
Yeah, I mean, I don't ever want to negate that and say it's impossible, because anything's possible. But I think that for the majority of us, we're gonna have a journey ahead, and it's okay. I'm done. I quit probably 5, 6 years ago, hating myself because
Mm,
of how I felt. And I think that's step number one. Like,
right.
God's not surprised by it. God doesn't hate you because of it. He actually wants to use it. And if we can get more into looking at what that's more about, it can actually be quite exciting and fulfilling, not just for me, but for others.
Right. Incredible. So it sounds like both your wife and you are on board this Christian train, out to glorify God and bring in the kingdom and all that, Jesus talk. I love it. I know it's a little bit hard for, some people to relate because they've never experienced that. Maybe they don't have a lot of gay friends or people who are Christian also. And to be able to see, gayness or homosexuality played out in one sphere of our society, and it's mainly in the LGBTQ circles when it's talked about. And we always just kind of point to gay being that. But then we see you living out your sexuality in a different way under your religious pretenses and your convictions of faith. And I can resonate with that, given we share a lot of values and experiences as well. But how about for people who say, like, he's just kidding himself, like he should really just like drop it and drop the act and just like come back into the gay lifestyle. Like he'll be more fulfilled that way. Being fulfilled means having your sexuality be authenticated through actual sex, right? Like, what would you
Right.
say to that?
Well, I've had people say that, and it's okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't offend me. I get it, and I don't get mad when somebody's walking with me one minute and then the next they decide to go and do what you just described. It's okay. I understand it. I understand the temptation because I'm tempted with it every day,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But I think that
Yeah.
I'm kind of losing
And
my train.
on that same point, I would say like straight folks deal with lust in whatever form. Like for people who are of the Christian faith or any other faith generally,
Mm,
we understand that adultery is a bad thing, and like cheating on your spouse or your partner, your girlfriend or boyfriend is a terrible thing. You've gone through that multiple times, when you're in the gay culture, and
right,
then now you have just your marriage and you're trying to keep that together. Other straight people deal with that all the time. It's not like they're not tempted either, right?
right.
Yeah.
Well, and then too, I did experience it. I did go out and try,
Yeah.
and I wasn't. It just wasn't fulfilling. And a life defined by sexual expression is not fulfilling in itself.
Mm,
It's just not. And really, a life defined by anything outside of God's best for us is not fulfilling. Maybe for a season, but we're going to come to the end of that thing and we're going to be empty, whether we've put all of our stock in our sexuality, our career, our children, our work, anything that we and that's why for me I don't say I'm gay. I prefer to say I'm a Christian who's same-sex attracted, because that's I want that to be first and foremost in my life, even when there's days where it doesn't feel like that's the case. Yeah, it it's definitely I just it wasn't for me. Um and I don't say that in a way to try to convince people that, oh, it's not for you either. Some people don't learn from hearing another person's story. Some people want to go and see for themselves, and I understand that.
right.
But what I've found in the years that I've talked to people and worked with people is that my experience has been revalidated hundreds of times in other men's stories. So I think we hold a lot of weight that the media doesn't necessarily highlight. And I hope that people will continue to share and speak out that, hey, there is a better way,
Mm,
a better path for men like us.
right. And regardless, of people's faith here, like we value one another. I see how you value people who are in same sex relationships. I mean, in living letters, you have people who are gay and committed, and maybe not
Sure.
committed to any one person, but of the same sex as well. So I love that you're inclusive, that you don't ever banish somebody just because they don't share the same values or lifestyle as you. And we need more of that because if we, especially as Christians, are supposed to be the most accepting and loving people, obviously everybody has standards, but the most loving, accepting people, then we have to lay our own pride down. We have to lay down our own fears and our guard, right, and be able to include other people, even if they don't think the way that we do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, I'm very interested in how you manage to make your wife happy. All right, and I think a lot of people are interested in how does this work? Because I get this common trope culturally that women actually really like gay guys, right? Not only as friends, okay? We can understand the gay friend trope, right? Like you're empathetic, you're someone who is very kind, patient, puts other people before yourself. Again, you're a chaplain in the Air Force. You do that on a daily basis. And I know that you're good at that, even in living letters, the way that I see you interact with other guys. So that is a huge turn on for women, like a nurturing, kind hearted guy who's not just like out for himself and kind of callous and not emotionally intuitive. So what ways have you found that your gayness, for lack of better terms, or your same sex attractions, your effeminate nature sometimes comes out to your benefit? And then also, what are the struggles within your marriage? Like how's the bedroom talk, right? Like how's that going?
Yeah, good questions. I think that yes, like you said, there are a lot of attributes about typical attributes that are appealing to a lot of women, and I think God kind of has a sense of humor about it because we have this sort of stereotypical heterosexual marriage that we're kind of flipped. I'm, like you said, more the nurturer, more into housework, more into things like that, and my wife is more into sports.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, knows directions better than me. Is a little bit, and when we talk, when we talk sex, is a little more like a dude, where I'm more like emotionally driven that way.
Like the foreplay, and she's just like, "Come on, let's just go into like dog pile here."
Yeah, or I like sweet notes, sweet things, to be done for me, to help me, or whatever the case. So,
right,
and it's okay. Like, if there's anything I should say, that's okay.
Yeah,
to be different, and I think that the bedroom, sex is sort of like the barometer to me, it's like the barometer of how we're connecting emotionally. And, have we invested in each other in that week? Have we put one another first that week? And it's going to reflect in the bedroom. And it takes work. It just takes work. And, you don't feel the same way that you do 15 years later than you did when you first got married. And it takes work. It takes saying the hard things. Sometimes that work is together, and sometimes it's apart. Sometimes it's in a place like Living Letters, or sometimes it's a ladies' trip to the beach without me and 3 kids.
Okay.
So there's a lot that goes into that. Self-care, open and honest communication, and just knowing that I'm not going to leave you in the same way God doesn't leave you. I'm not going to leave you. Come hell or high water. We're gonna work this thing through. And so, and then knowing that love language. My wife is quality time. So, if I need to make sure her tank is full, and she's feeling valued, and you don't always affirm someone because you feel it, right? A lot of what makes a successful marriage and even a successful friendship, because can I tell you, it's the same principles, really. I mean, okay, you're not having sex with your friend, but just about everything else that you would do, we should do that with friends too. So that's really it. And it's okay if all your intimacy isn't topped off with an orgasm.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just need to be held. Sometimes you need to fall asleep together. And so we don't need to prescribe these worldly expectations on what a godly marriage should be. And I'll tell you, our first night of marriage, we didn't have sex. I didn't know how to do it. And I was nervous about whether I would perform. We were exhausted. I felt like this. I mean, the ceremony was beautiful, but let's face it, the ceremony is for your family, right?
Right.
I mean, if I had it to do all over again, we would have eloped to Hawaii and whatever.
Sounds great.
But yeah, so yeah, note to those out there who are considering marriage, do it for you guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's okay. It's okay for, as you get older, some things change, especially after a bunch of kids are born. So in the same way that I said earlier, I don't want my life to be driven by my sexuality. Well, your marriage can't be driven by it either. You've got to have something beyond the feels and sex. You just have to. Because if you don't, sex is going to be a problem or non-existent.
I feel like the way that you're viewing sex is more ancillary. Like, you have certain parts of this mechanism, that you call marriage and relationship, but sex is like, it's not the main part. It's not the main component that's driving everything. It's like, the engine.
A byproduct, yeah.
Byproduct, right? And sometimes a buttress to that, because like physical affection, definitely some people are like that and need that as well. So I really appreciate the way that you kind of worded that and explained that, because I know plenty of heterosexual couples who are lonely, who are feeling betrayed by their other spouse. I grew up with two parents that split, and like sex is not going to solve all your problems. It's not going to be the glue that holds a marriage together. And I know that for Christians especially, like marriage is a symbolism, of Christ and the bride in the New Testament, and even in the Old Testament, like God names himself as a bride to his people Israel, right? So there's that duality, or that complementary type of relationship on the human side and also on the spiritual side, and that wholeness that comes with it. Now, I want to get to Living Letters, because I know that that's been a group that you've been allowed to have these amazing conversations and lead in these conversations as well with other men who share about their struggles, their shame, their abuse, their struggles in marriage, their struggles in relationship on various levels. And that's helped you in your marriage, obviously, as you said. So how does this group function? Who is the makeup of this group?
Sure. So the people that I chose to sort of lead with me were just people that were leading naturally in the ways that I would want someone to lead me in these things. And Tony Moore was with Exodus, Hope for Wholeness. We've got a couple folks that have been counseling SSA gay folks for 30 plus years. I think all of us have had our fair share of experiences and sort of knowing what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
So we hope to skip past the things that don't work.
Right, like conversion therapy, or
right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, but I have a few friends who've had conversion therapy and they swear by it.
Yeah. I've
heard of that. Yeah. So it's and
it works for some people, huh?
Yeah. What's that?
It works for some people.
I think aspects of it do really get at the heart of the matter for some men.
Yeah.
But I would
explain like what that looks like too, because I don't want people to picture just electroshock therapy, or you're making people convulse or something.
Yes. Yeah. So what I've heard that's been most beneficial from, I've never had it, but what I've heard is just the tie that they make to a lot of times the father wound, and sort of trying to restore that in a way, and make the man become aware of it and work through that in a loving way. I've heard that that's been very beneficial for many. And like I mentioned earlier, there's so many aspects. Like in our culture, do men really know how to be physically affectionate? I mean, so I think that what many of us bring to Living Letters is, most are grateful that they have a place to share.
Yeah.
And then I think that I'm grateful to have a place to process under the umbrella of grace, where no one's going to kick me out if I ask this question or suggest this thing. Um, and if you've ever noticed, I don't prescribe any particular thing. Like, I don't say conversion therapy, or everybody go share physical affection, or
Hmm.
everybody meet up, or everybody, share nudity, or everybody do that. I try to kind of stay away from that
Yeah.
and hope that the Holy Spirit will guide each individual man, because
Hmm.
he's more than able to do that, in
Right.
sort of the path they want to go. So I'd say what sets us apart, I hope what sets us apart would be a trust in the Holy Spirit to lead each man into healthy community, and to live an abundant life. And I am starting to sort of stress, especially to a lot of our single guys, to be really intentional about placing themselves in life-giving community, even if it means to move. People move for jobs, they move for all these other
Really
things,
point. That's
but
yeah.
a lot of what I see the issue is just isolation, and being alone, and not having a community to work these things through with.
Mm, totally. Yeah, honestly, if I could be real for a second, like during COVID, my roommates are great, but again, I think men generally have a difficult time like showing affection and so forth. And I love getting to know people. I love meeting people, like yourself and others. And I hate that we're just stuck in these screens. We can't actually like shake hands or hug. And I was like, you know what? I've heard of these cuddle groups. Like maybe I'll go check them out because like I'm really needing a hug. Just really needing a hug, right? So that's brilliant because a lot of people, change locations or residencies because what? Maybe I want to move so I can be closer to family. But you have your other spiritual family, you have your, even for gay communities, they have their little local hotspots. They move because of that as well, right? So like
Yes.
we're drawn to our communities. A lot of times we don't have that, especially given recent occurrences with, COVID. I think we realize that a lot more.
Yes, and I think that so many of us have been raised with the right theology and the right view of God, but most of us haven't had an experience with
Mm.
Him in the way that we really need it.
Yeah.
And
How so?
well, through community,
Mhm.
through physical affection,
Right.
through words of affirmation. And I think that seeing how some men have been so impacted just through a virtual group,
Mhm.
imagine how much more they would be impacted if they were physically in a community
Right.
that could do life together. So I encourage
Yeah.
the single guys, hey, get a house with your best friends and do life.
Right.
Like, and I encourage the guys to post pictures when they get together.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
show the world, everything else is on full display. Show off your friendship. Like,
Right.
talk about what this person means to you.
Right.
And So, it's so much of it is a mystery, and we're learning as we go, and we're kind of sharing as we learn. Um,
Mhm.
but I'm grateful for the space, and I'm grateful for the people that are in that space to make it what it is.
I love the commonality, the spiritual aspect and all that. What are some of the challenges of running this group? Because again, it's comprised of many different moving parts, different leaders as well and things that you do, but also the people that are involved, they don't agree on various things. Like you have Jewish individuals as well in this community, right? And people who might not, I'm guessing most of them, if not all of them, believe in a God, but I could be wrong. And people have different ideas of what God is, who he is, and then maybe even his gender these days. But, like also like what does that commonality bring together is also this diversity of individuals that brings problems as well. And so you're being vulnerable, you're sharing all these things. What happens when somebody messes up, right, in their sexual integrity and their path towards righteousness, in the Christian sense, and trying to be pure in their sexual integrity. Like, what happens there? And also when you have a falling out with somebody, in the community, like, have you had that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yep.
yeah, yeah. Would you care to share a story or two about what that looks
Sure.
like? Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I'll start with, you know, the lapse in sexual integrity and mistakes. Well, I've been there.
yeah. Hmm.
Okay. Chief center here, right? The
Right,
whole
right.
point of the group is we
Yeah,
struggle with same sex attraction. And oh, by the way, we love God too. And we're reconciling this. So, you know, I never would have started the group if there hadn't been this angst between those two things, right? And so I'm aware of that in myself. I'm aware of that in every member. And I think that for me, it's not a one mistake and you're done, you're out kind of thing. It's a Matthew 18, right? Work it out with your brother, right? Work that thing out. And honestly, I don't think we get to a place of healing until we work that through. Until we say, hey, this is what I'm feeling about you. This is how I experience you. This is what goes on in my mind and in my body when this is said or when this is done, or I don't like this, I do like that. This works for me, that doesn't. You really need that space to sort all that out. And I'll be honest, it can be a messy space. Like,
hmm,
people
yeah,
don't do that perfectly, especially when they've never unpacked any of this ever, right?
mm,
And so there's a tendency sometimes for men to get in the group, and it's like a starving man at a buffet, right? Who forgets his manners and doesn't know how to
uh,
partake of what's being given. And so they come in with good intentions, but so much is aroused within them. Their whole personhood is aroused. And well, part of your personhood is your sexuality.
right.
And what I like to say is that I don't cast my sexuality out. It's in the bus, right? It's just not in the driver's seat. So
Uh,
I'm trusting the Holy Spirit to drive that vehicle, and my sexuality is coming along for the ride. I'm not
right.
casting it out or hating it or beating myself up, because I don't think we can really get to a place of healing that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I encourage Matthew 18 and resolving it, one to another. And if that can't happen for whatever reason, and there's maybe disrespect involved or unwanted sexual advances, that kind of thing, well, I
Mhm.
want them to bring it to me, and then, or a moderator. And then in that case, we'll take a look. And if the person is not repentant at all and is like, whatever, they maybe they came in with a good intention, like I said, and now they're kind of off another place. Well, look, it's not the right time for you to be in the group, and we'll remove them. Um, but if they're willing to resolve it, we let them stay, and we give them another shot. As it relates to the different, you know, faiths and different sides and takes on this whole
Yeah,
gay Christian thing,
right.
we were at one point wide open to, and we still are to a degree,
Yeah,
but in the language, it was a little too open at
yeah,
one point, and it was like a ship. It was like two heads, a two-headed monster. One person saying this, another person saying that, and everybody wondering, what is this? So
right,
I'm hearing one thing from you and another thing from this person, and so
right.
we had to kind of clean that up a bit, and
Mhm.
that was challenging for about a month. But I'd say since we did that, I've literally had just like no issues since probably September of last year. So I think the changes we made were good. We needed to solidify our identity as a group a bit more.
Yeah,
And so while others are certainly welcome to come in and be a part, this is the identity of the group.
right.
And that's there in writing and there for everybody to see. So
Yeah, and what would you say is, in short, the identity of the group?
I'd say side B.
Side
I
B.
mean,
Okay.
yeah,
Can you explain? Because there's going to be people, even on the Christian side, who have no clue what that means.
yes.
I
So,
understand. So side B, side A, and I brought up side X earlier, so should have explained what that is. But can you explain a little bit?
yes. So I'm not an expert in these things. I'm about 3 years in. So I'll tell you what I've seen and what I know, and then you can fill in the gaps. But
Perfect. Perfect.
to me, side B is a person that is fine with the term gay. Even most of them even use it, but they hold to the biblical ethic for sexuality and marriage and whatnot. And so, um, but I think tend to be more open toward pursuing that. Again, like I said, the what is the abundant life for a gay same sex attracted man? For me, side B has been a little more open to that journey, and that's why I identify probably the most with that. Side A is, gay marriage, gay sex affirming,
Mm-hmm.
Christians. I forgot to mention all these are Christians.
Yeah.
So this could very well be, or this a Christian couple
Yeah.
who believes that God blesses their union as is,
Right.
and they do the things that normal married people do. And then side X would be more the kind of pray the gay away reparative therapy camp,
Yeah.
where I'm sort of wanting God to remove this part of me and make me straight and do the things that straight people do. And then my understanding side Y is kind of like side B, except side Y doesn't use the gay term. They
Right.
say same sex attracted. So that's like my down and dirty
That's a perfect explanation. I would agree with that explanation wholeheartedly. Yeah, and some well-known names like Christopher Yuan, who was in the gay culture for a number of years, like crazy story. You know his story very well, I'm sure. Was dealing drugs, going to dental school, but then flopped out and then went to jail. So that's where he met God, and then he came out of that type of mindset and became a firm believer alongside of Jackie Hill Perry, who was in lesbian relationships, also what is coined a stud, within the Black community, which is basically like semi-trans in that sense, kind of more the masculine girlfriend.
Yes.
And then she also came to faith and believed that, what, I don't identify with this gay side. I think she's like probably between. It's hard because a lot of people are like flip flopping between side B and side Y, and the only difference again is side Y is strictly like I will not use the term gay because that's not who I am. Right? It's my faith. That's who I am.
Right. Yeah, and I didn't want to put a label on the group. I really didn't. I'm not a fan of the sides because I don't want to. And I feel like we've been, as a people, sort of ostracized and cut out from so many different places for so long. I hate the division in our own camp, So I've always tried to avoid that. And I have friends they're not even Christians. They're just LGBT or whatever, but I love them dearly. And so I was always fearful that I would put up a divide. And, but I think for the sake of the group, it was necessary to put out that identity. But I like to glean things from people of all sides, and I think that's healthy. I think that even if we have a certain leaning or toward a certain side, we should really stay read to a degree on what other people are experiencing, and if we just close ourselves out, I think there's something to be missed there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. And I appreciate you again, like sharing on this platform because this platform we're here to be able to provoke thoughts about what is the standard status quo, about sexuality, about Christianity, about faith, and for myself, like race is a big issue too. And you also kind of deal with that within your marriage, with your wife, and how do you raise semi-black kids? Like they could just identify as black as well, right? And you have all these different integrations of identities within your own household, within your own community, within living letters, so I can only imagine how tough this season has been in the past 5 years or so. Our country is quite a mess, and I really do admire the willingness that you have to be able to promote a sense of civility, unity, and even when you have convictions which will separate you from certain types of groups and distinguish you from different types of groups, you do allow for people to be who they are, be authentic to who they are, and you still accept them.
Absolutely.
I see that, and I appreciate that very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
I am very, very grateful for your time here today, and I want you to be able to share whatever you want in these last 5 minutes. So if you have something on your heart, or if you want to press on a certain point that we discussed, feel free to share with the audience today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, as I've mentioned before, I love and so Corinthians 13, that they use it a lot of times to describe like what a marriage would look like, right? And um, the scriptures about love, and a lot of people kind of misuse that because those scriptures are actually about what friendship should be like, right?
Mm,
Two stay warm if they lay down together, and they get a double reward for their labors being doubled. And so, again, I think I want to encourage everyone, not just men, but everyone, to that it's okay to have a sense of curiosity in your journey with God, and it's okay to ask God to help you and welcome Him into your sexuality. He doesn't think that you're dirty because you feel a certain way, and I was taught that for so long, and that's just not my experience with Him. Maybe the experience with the church, but not my experience with Him. And He so longs to come alongside us in this and help us. And I think too, we need to really take a good look at our culture and its aversion to suffering as a whole, right? If we come to know Him through the fellowshipping of our suffering, many of the very things that we suffer through and endure through, are meant to be a blessing to someone else. And I'm at a stage in my life, and I didn't mention this before, my whole wanting to be involved in the gay community was really triggered in 2016. After the Pulse shooting, I went with a group down there to just love on the survivors and the community. And it was like a cattle prod to my spirit that you've got to get involved. You've got to love them with a sense of urgency, right? And you had these communities, these clubs, and different places that had really become like churches to the LGBT community because they weren't welcome in my church,
yeah.
right? So that was a real eye opener for me. So I think to the Christian, we've got to be like Jesus, right? Not like what we're seeing in our church,
right.
And we don't serve people out of some sense that, oh, I've got to change you. No, you've got to love them, right?
And it's uncomfortable. He did
Yeah,
uncomfortable things.
yeah. But if love covers a multitude of sins, and is in the sacrifice that Christ made is can really cover us like He says it can, it's a done deal. It covers every sin, every struggle, right? And it's harder when it's relational like this. It's harder when it affects something like your sexuality that's such a deep seated part of who we are. But we're not disqualified from God's grace, right? If anything, I think that the next major revival in the United States, in particular, because we need one. We're seeing them in so many other places around the world, like China, Middle East. Yeah. But I honestly think that the next major revival in our country is coming on the backs of same-sex attracted believers.
Oof. You want to bet money on that?
Yeah, I think if there's anything that I really feel and sense, some of us that have disqualified ourselves because of this, no, you are the very qualified. And God we're gonna see more and more people begin to speak out, and what we share is going to be relevant. And the story is you're loved with a deep, unending, everlasting love, and God knows all about it. The Holy Spirit knows why things are the way they are, and He's got a unique, tailor-made path and journey for each one of us, and He's designed us to do that together. And you know what? I'm at a point now where if the warehouse box church down the road doesn't want to endorse that and help me through it, it's okay. We'll form our own group, our own community, and we'll be intentional, and we'll do it with a sense of urgency, right? So and again, like I mentioned earlier, be intentional about your community. Be intentional about who you're connected to, what they believe, and how they treat you. Be real, pay very close attention to that, and just, you know, find a place where, for me, that's been with other same-sex attracted brothers who get it. Um, and like I said earlier, some people would have forbid me to connect on that level with other people that experience this, but it's okay. Jesus is big enough, and the grace of God is big enough to lead us and to help one another.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Wow, I am very inspired by your story, and obviously, it's a very unique one to many people, but it's one that's so relevant for our times because we have so many polar ends of our social spheres, like Christians, and you have people of other faith, but also the segregation of churches, by based on skin color, and then you have sexuality being another huge part of that within the Christian faith. But broadly, it's just something that we need to be able to talk about. We need to be able to talk about sexuality in the conservative end, and we need to be able to talk about how how you don't have to be afraid to associate with a Christian. You don't have to be afraid. Like I have plenty of conservative friends. I would consider myself a little bit more leaning on the conservative side here. I don't think I'm that scary. I know, Tony, you're a little bit hesitant coming on the show. Okay, I see you smiling over there. I try my best, to be accepting and inclusive of all people. I know that you do that, Tony, yourself. And that's why I am so honored for you to be able to come on today, be able to share your story with everybody else. Now, I know there's so much that we want to cover that we probably did not get to cover, and you can get connected with Tony if you have questions about living letters and what that's about. How do you have a relationship, with this woman, with your wife, and where do you put your penis and so forth, within marriage. I'm just joking, but all these questions about how to live out your faith and who is this Holy Spirit that you talk about all the time within this conversation. Those are plenty good questions you can bring to Tony. Where would they be able to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm on Facebook. They can always message me through Messenger.
Sit down. Yeah.
Yep. You can always message me there. It's I'm the only Tony DeVoile in Facebook, so it's DeVoile. They can message me there. We can get connected. To get in the group, you have to be invited in by a current member.
Mm.
But if they just message me and we have a little chat, I could just bring them right in. If they're invited by another member, they got to answer like 3 quick questions, and then they'll be brought in. So
Right. Perfect. Perfect. Well, I will link those groups and your information down below. Thank you so much again, Tony, for joining me, friend. I really am glad that you were able to share your story and these amazing different outlets that you have under your belt.
thank you, John. I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you. Admire you so much.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Admire you too. All right, guys. Well, that's another episode here on John Chen Out to the World here with Tony DeVoile. You guys have a good one.